Hey everyone, it's Joe from Antilio's Woodshop. In this video, I'll be going over the assembly of this jet drum sander. Some quick specs before we get started. This is the jet drum sander model JWDS 1836. 18 means you have 18 inches of capacity in one pass and 36 inches of capacity in two passes. So for example, you have a 34-inch wide board. You'll pass it through once, flip it again, and pass the other side. This drum sander has the maximum board thickness of 3 inches and the minimum board thickness of 1/32 of an inch. Also, minimum board length is 2 3/8. The smaller box contains all the parts for the stand, so let's open this up so we can assemble it. As far as tools needed for the assembly, the manual calls for a 12 and 14 wrenches, 3 and 6 millimeter hex wrenches, and a straight edge. Let's start putting the legs together. Make sure everything is just hand tight for now so it's easier to assemble, and then so we can correct it later on in case everything doesn't line up. I'm going to use clamps to prop up one side to make it easier to assemble everything. To install the shelf, I'm going to use these two clamps on one side so I don't have to balance the shelf while installing it. Next step in the manual is to install the leveling feet, but we're not going to be using this. We're going to be installing casters. Next up is to put downwards pressure on the stand to let it settle. After that, use your 12 millimeter socket to tighten down all the flange nuts. After that struggle bus, let's keep going with the assembly. To install the handle, you're going to need a 3mm hex key. Now we're gonna remove the 4 screws that holds this plywood on the drum sander. I'm gonna save the washers and then this Allen head so that we can use it to mount the drum sander to the base. Next, I'm gonna carefully position the drum sander on top of the sand so I can align the holes on the base and on a drum sander, and then I'm gonna tighten it up with a 6mm key. So keep the hardware loose so that you can move it around until you have all 4 of them fastened or all 4 of them threaded. And you can go ahead and tighten it up. All right, I'm gonna plug it in and fire it up. So there's a few more checks that I need to do before I can actually use this drum sander. The first thing I'm going to check is I need to make sure that the conveyor belt is tracking correctly. And I need to look at the spaces on the side. I'm making sure as this conveyor belt is going that the spaces on this side, the white that you see, remains about the same. The second thing I need to check while the conveyor belt is running is I need to make sure that it is properly tensioned. And in order to do that, I'm gonna put a slight downward pressure with my hand against the conveyor belt and the table and see if the conveyor belt stops. If the conveyor belt stops with the hand pressure, I need to adjust these 2 Allen head bolts right here to get the proper tension. Now we need to make sure that this height gauge is properly zeroed. In order to do that, I'm gonna run the drum all the way down until it touches the conveyor belt, and I need to make sure that this is going to be at 0. So the drum is touching the conveyor belt, and as you can see, we're at 0. That's going to be as good as you get with something like this unless you install a digital readout. Also, the rollers look pretty flat to me to the table. I'm going to roll with it for now because I still need to install the INFEED and the OUTFEED table. And then if I need to make adjustments later, I'll do it. This is the optional INFEED and OUTFEED table, so let's open it up and see what comes with it. All right, not much to it. We have 4 brackets, obviously your INFEED and OUTFEED table, and then the hardware to hook everything up. So I'm gonna bring you over to the drum sander and let's install this. As you can see, I prepped my Allen head bolts with the washers. There's going to be 2 longer ones, which is what you're going to use to connect your bracket to the stand, and then the 4 shorter ones is what you're going to use to connect your actual extension table to the bracket. Also, for the brackets, you have 2 different sizes, as you can see right here. The long one's going to be for the front extension table, and then the short one's going to be for the back one. If I didn't mention already, you're going to need a 6mm hex key. To install the brackets, just go hand tight for now, and then we'll tighten everything once everything is lined up. Now let's align our INFEED and OUTFEED table to our conveyor belt. Right here I have a Veritas straight edge that I'm going to use to align the tables at the same time. If you don't have a long straight edge like this, you can definitely just align one side at a time, or if you have a pretty true jointed board that you believe to be very straight, you can use that as well. So what I'm going to do next is I'm gonna lower the drum to put a little bit of pressure on my straight edge to kind of keep it in the middle, and then I'm gonna work on each side, trying to bring it up, tightening it and loosening it as I see fit. Once this side is good, I'm gonna move on to the back side and move that one as well. All right, so I think I got it first try. So I'm gonna go ahead and raise the drum and check my settings again. It looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and run some stock on it. All right, let's test this out. What I have here is about a 1/4 inch of walnut that I had resawn from an 8/4 piece, as I didn't want to waste any material and I only needed about 1 1/4 inches of that 8/4 material. So I saved this piece so I can go ahead and flatten it and use it for my cutting boards, because I do a lot of edge grain and end grain cutting boards, and this can be used for those tiny strips that I do. As you can see, pretty bad bandsaw marks. I don't know if that's focusing. So I'm gonna mark this side. And I'm gonna run it on my drum sander. I'm gonna aim for about 3/8 of an inch to start with, and then work down from there. Since this is the first time, I don't really wanna mess anything up. Okay, so pretty happy with the results. It takes a little bit of time. I didn't want to rush it since it's the first time using it, and from what I read online, you don't want to rush the drum sander anyways because it is not a planer. So a little bit at a time. It's gonna take a while, but it got rid of all the bandsaw marks, as you can see. And now I can use this piece of walnut as thin strips for all my cutting boards. So that is a plus instead of it going to waste. So this video isn't really meant as a review, more of like an assembly guide and first impressions, because I only used it on that one piece of walnut. I will be putting this drum sander to its spaces though, as I make a lot of edge grain and end grain cutting boards. Especially on the end grain cutting boards, I needed to get rid of the router marks from flattening it, and also my planer. I can't seem to get rid of planer marks. I feel like I can adjust this better to get rid of the planer marks. If you found this video useful, please go ahead and subscribe and hit that like button. And until next time, see ya.